Christmas night at a luxury restaurant. My sister got a designer bag, my parents a luxury trip. When my turn came, my sister handed me an envelope. I opened it, inside was the bill. My mother smirked. That's why we invited you, right? Ha! My sister laughed. Of course, who else would pay? The family laughed. Then the waiter returned with unexpected news. Christmas night arrived, and we found ourselves at a fancy restaurant. My sister flaunted her new designer bag, while my parents celebrated with a luxury trip. When it was my turn, my sister passed me an envelope. Inside, I discovered the bill, and my mother's sly smile said it all. That's why we invited you, right? My sister chuckled. Of course, who else would pay? The family erupted in laughter just as the waiter returned with some unexpected news. In her small Chicago apartment, looking out at the gently falling snow, Amy Bradley sighed. A tight, familiar feeling had gripped her chest as Christmas neared. For the past 7 years, she'd worked as an editor, proofreading literary works at a modest publishing house, and lived a stable life shadowed by the constant worry of not being enough. This sense of inadequacy deepened every time she returned home. Her father, Richard Bradley, was a successful real estate developer. Her mother, Martha, owned an upscale boutique, and her sister Brooke had made a name for herself as an executive in her father's company, even earning a feature in a local business magazine as a rising female entrepreneur. Amy, how long will you remain the bookworm? Are you really okay with that salary? Her family would often ask. Why not be as ambitious as Brooke? These comments had followed her since childhood, labeling her the underachiever of the family. All Amy could do was nod quietly. Then one day she received a terse text from her mother. Family dinner at Lucille for Christmas. Be there by 7 o'clock. No back and forth, just a command. Lucille, known as the most exclusive high-end French restaurant in Chicago, had seats secured by her father's connections. Amy rose and sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of cookbooks and photos of world cuisine. Secretly, she had a passion for cooking. For 4 years, she'd run a blog called Amy's Kitchen Diary, dedicating her weekends to creating new recipes and taking photos. Though her readership was small, it was steadily growing, and recently she even started receiving small writing gigs from cooking magazines. But she kept it hidden from her family, knowing they'd dismiss it as a hobby that wouldn't pay the bills. On her laptop, she read the article she'd posted the day before. A Christmas recipe for orange and rosemary roasted duck. In the comments, a reader had written, I tried serious cooking for the first time using your recipe, and my family was impressed. That simple praise boosted her confidence. Amy slipped her phone into her pocket and glanced into her closet. A family dinner after so many years, what should she wear? Her eyes landed on her one luxury item. A deep green cashmere dress splurged on with last year's bonus. A family gathering for Christmas after 3 long years, she whispered, hoping this time she'd finally join the conversation, that maybe they'd see her worth. With hope in her heart, Amy took the dress and headed out. Stepping from a taxi into the warm, glowing lights of Lucille, she smoothed the wrinkles from her dress with trembling fingers. No more running away, she promised herself as she pushed open the door. Inside, elegant decorations and softly chiming chandeliers set a luxurious scene, with chefs and staff mingling with guests, and soft French classical music in the background. At the reception, Amy's reservation was acknowledged, and she was escorted to a private room at the back. On her way, she couldn't help but admire the artful presentation of every dish. The vibrant colors, the delicate plating, even the rising steam. It was all like living in a showcase. Someday I'll create art like this, she thought as she moved toward the reserved table. Ah, you made it at last, Martha, her mother said as she shot her daughter a scrutinizing look. Martha, ever the picture of perfection in her Chanel suit and pearl necklace, exuded an air of effortless beauty. Sorry I'm late, Amy murmured softly. Richard, her father, a distinguished man in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and a polished suit, glanced at his watch. That dress, Amy, it really stands out, he teased. Brooke, who looked as if she had stepped off a fashion runway in her designer dress and diamond earrings, added with a refined smile, yes, that dress really makes a statement. Suddenly, Amy felt her own dress was less impressive by comparison. Let's have a toast, her father announced, raising a glass of vintage champagne. Here's to another year of good health and success for the whole family. As glasses clinked, Amy silently wondered about her own achievements. Her blog had recently been recognized by a culinary website as promising talent, news she wasn't sure how to share with her family. Brooke, tell us about your latest successes, her father prodded. Brooke launched into details about a new real estate project while the conversation quickly shifted to work, gossip, and even some politics. Amy sat quietly, playing the part of the attentive listener, nodding as the main course ended and dessert was served. Then Martha interjected. By the way, we haven't exchanged Christmas presents yet. Rising, she pulled out several beautifully wrapped boxes from a shopping bag. First, she gave Brooke a large box. With eager fingers, Brooke unwrapped it to reveal a designer bag. One so exclusive it had a 3-month waiting list. Oh my, this is it, Brooke exclaimed. Next, Richard presented Martha's gift to him. A voucher for a 2-week luxury resort vacation, already booked for the coming month. Finally, it was Amy's turn. She prepared small gifts for each family member. A limited edition book from her editing work and homemade Christmas cookies, modest yet heartfelt. Martha gave Amy a meaningful look before Brooke handed her a small envelope with a sweet smile. Inside, Amy found a single sheet of paper. As she read it, her face drained of color. It was the dinner bill. "What is this?" she stammered. "This is your present, the cost of tonight's meal. Please pay," Martha declared loudly. "It's only natural," Brooke chimed in with a laugh. "You've always depended on us. Isn't it time you contributed to the family?" her father added. Amy could barely move as she stared at the bill. Over $200 per person for a high-end French dinner for 4. Nearly a week's salary for her. "This has to be a joke," she managed in a shaky voice. Just then a quiet voice interrupted. Looking up, Amy saw a man in his early 40s in a dark suit. His deep blue eyes exuded kindness and dignity. "A message from the owner for our guests," announced the waiter standing behind him. The owner's treat for the meal had been a surprise to everyone, except for Amy, who met his gaze with a mix of recognition and curiosity. The man introduced himself. "I'm Jacob Monroe, the owner of Lucille. Thank you for dining with us tonight." Richard raised an eyebrow. "It's an honor to receive a personal greeting from you, Jacob," he said. Without directly addressing Richard, Jacob surveyed the table with an intent that went beyond simple pleasantries. "I apologize for the unpleasant experience," Jacob said quietly, addressing the tension at the table that must have been sparked by their earlier remarks. "Actually," Amy interrupted quickly, her cheeks burning with embarrassment, "I'm a fan of yours." The table fell silent. "A fan of mine?" Jacob asked with a gentle smile. "You're Amy Bradley, the writer behind Amy's Kitchen Diary, aren't you? Your orange and rosemary roasted duck recipe impressed not only me but my head chef as well." Brooke looked on curiously. "Wait, you write a blog?" she asked. Amy was speechless. She never imagined her secret passion would be revealed in such a way, especially by the owner of Lucille. "I've been following your blog for about a year," Jacob continued. "It's a wonderful mix of passion, respect for ingredients, and a desire to connect with people through food." Martha stared at Amy in astonishment. "Why keep this hidden?" she asked. "I thought no one would be interested," Amy replied softly. "There are always people who care," Jacob said gently. "I was moved by the way you value time with your family on a night like this. That's why I have a proposition for you." He pulled a business card from his pocket. Its golden letters reading Monroe Restaurant Group. "We run 5 restaurants across Chicago and New York, including Lucille, and next year we're launching a new project, a food culture magazine and website called Taste of Chicago. I'd like you to join us as a regular columnist." The room fell silent as the offer hung in the air, and Amy's heart raced with the promise of a future where her passion for cooking could finally shine. Amy nearly couldn't believe her ears when Jacob proposed that she become a regular columnist, one that would uncover Chicago's hidden culinary gems, share recipes featuring seasonal ingredients, and reflect on food culture from her own perspective, all with a proper salary and full credit. The mood at the table shifted immediately. Richard's eyes filled with new respect for Jacob, and Brooke sat in stunned silence while Martha's tone turned unexpectedly warm. "How wonderful!" Martha exclaimed, clearly delighted that their daughter had been scouted by a renowned restaurant owner. Amy narrowed her eyes at her mother's sudden change in attitude. It was hard to reconcile this with the condescension she'd endured just moments before. "If you're interested," Jacob continued, "I'd also like to mention our new real estate development project. We have properties perfectly suited for expanding new restaurant locations." Before Richard could interject, Jacob added in a firm yet courteous voice, "Tonight is Christmas Eve. Let's leave business talk for another time." Then he turned to Amy and asked, "What do you say? I'd love to discuss this in more detail at my office next week." Confused and almost in disbelief, Amy wasn't sure whether she was dreaming or if this was really happening. Yet the genuine look in Jacob's eyes, and knowing he had actually read her blog, stirred something deep inside her. Finally, she said, "I'd love to hear more." Jacob's face lit up. "Wonderful. How about Monday at 2 p.m.? I'll be waiting in my office." With a slight bow to everyone, he added, "Please enjoy your dinner tonight. We've prepared special Christmas cocktails for after dessert." After a brief silence, Brooke finally asked, "Sis, what's going on? How does someone like him know about your blog?" Martha echoed the question. "Yes, Amy. Why did you keep something so important a secret?" Taking a deep breath, Amy decided it was time to speak up. "I've been running a food blog for 4 years," she explained. "I started it just to document my cooking experiments, but as more readers joined, I found my voice. Last month, we surpassed 100,000 page views, and I even started receiving writing requests from several cooking magazines." Brooke was silent for a moment before asking, "Is that really a big deal for a food blog?" With a proud smile, Amy replied, "It's doing quite well. My readers are mostly women in their 30s to 50s who appreciate authentic cooking. Their comments and feedback are what drive me." As she spoke, a newfound confidence and passion shone through. Something her family had never seen before. I've even begun writing about food culture, introducing small local food shops and markets, sharing tips on choosing seasonal ingredients, and even exploring homemade preserves. Richard listened intently, viewing his daughter as a true businesswoman for the first time. Martha, visibly moved, asked gently, "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Amy hesitated before admitting, "I was afraid you'd just laugh at me." A heavy silence followed as everyone realized just how much they'd hurt her over the years. "We didn't mean any harm," Martha tried to say, but the words faltered. "It's different now," Amy continued quietly, "because I know my worth, and there are people who recognize it." She glanced toward Jacob's departing figure. This unexpected meeting felt like a door opening after being closed for too long. Just then, dessert arrived, and Amy quietly broke the surface of her chocolate mousse with her fork. 1 year later, as Chicago was once again blanketed in snow during the Christmas season, Amy was finishing her final proofreading at the Taste of Chicago editorial office. She closed her laptop and looked out the window as the city lights began to sparkle in the early dusk. Her life had transformed dramatically since accepting Jacob's offer. What began as a modest weekly column had exploded in popularity. Her feature, Amy's Taste Discovery, became the magazine's flagship. Her online articles consistently drew the highest views, and she'd even signed a contract for her first cookbook. "Is the manuscript ready?" Editor-in-Chief Sarah asked as she approached Amy's desk. "Yes, I just sent it. It's a Christmas special-themed family table. I'm excited for you to read it," Amy replied with a bright smile. Sarah added, "By the way, are you coming to the holiday party tonight? Jacob's really looking forward to it." Feeling her cheeks warm, Amy answered, "Of course, I wouldn't miss it." "It starts at 7, Sarah confirmed before heading off. Then Amy's smartphone buzzed. It was an email from her mother. Taking a deep breath, she opened it. "Amy, I need to talk to you about something. Please call me as soon as possible." Mom frowning, Amy recalled that contact from her mother had dwindled since that fateful Christmas. Although they congratulated her on the surface, it was clear there were mixed feelings about her success. Lately, troubling rumors had emerged about her father's real estate company. She'd heard that Richard Bradley's firm was facing a major lawsuit over serious defects in one of their luxury condominium developments. Hesitantly, Amy called her mother. On the line, Martha's tired voice explained, "You may have heard we're in a tough spot right now. Your father's company has been sued. And Brooke is involved in the project, too." Softly, Amy replied, "I know, I saw it in the newspapers." Martha continued, "We need funds, and since you're now successful, I hoped you could help." The memory of last Christmas, the humiliation of being handed that outrageous dinner bill, flashed painfully through her mind. Martha hurriedly added, "It was just a joke, Amy. We never meant to hurt you. Family is supposed to help one another, right?" Staring out at the snowy landscape, Amy thought deeply, not with anger but with a determined calm. "Mom," she finally said, "I don't have enough money to save the business. Yes, I'm earning more now, but I'm still in the early stages of my career, and I'm not going to ask Jacob for help. Money alone won't fix the underlying issues." On the other end, Martha's voice trembled as she sobbed. "Listen, Amy," she urged. "You need to find a way to rebuild the company, address the lawsuit honestly, and rethink your business practices." "But how?" Amy asked softly. Martha's voice softened further. "Remember who you were a year ago. What did you truly want? What matters most to you? Maybe start there." After a long silence, Martha whispered, "You've grown so strong." "I haven't grown strong," Amy replied. "I've just learned to be honest with myself." After the call, Amy picked up a framed photograph on her desk, the cover of the first issue of A Taste of Chicago. In the picture, she and Jacob stood side by side, their eyes shining with joy and pride. A gentle knock at the door broke her reverie. Jacob peeked in and said with a warm smile, "I'd like to talk before the party." Nodding, Amy grabbed her coat and left the office with him. Instead of heading to Lucille, Jacob led her to a small park where the snow was falling softly beneath trees strung with festive lights. Taking her hand, he said sincerely, "My life changed the moment I met you. Your passion for cooking, your honesty, and your strength inspire me every day." Then, reaching into his pocket, he produced a small box. "This might seem sudden, but I want to take our relationship to the next level. Our professional bond won't change, even if you say no. I just need you to know how I feel." Amy stared at the engagement ring nestled inside the box, her heart filling with joy and surprise. Yet she remembered her family. "There's something I need to tell you," she said with a serious tone. "My family is in a difficult situation right now." She explained everything about the call with her mother, leaving nothing unsaid. Jacob listened quietly and then smiled gently. "I'll support whatever decision you make," he promised. "But remember, everyone makes mistakes, even your family. If they're truly trying to change, shouldn't we give them a chance?" Feeling the gentle touch of snow on her cheeks, Amy finally replied, "You're right. I'm not going to cut them off completely. I want to rebuild our relationship, but only if they're willing to change." I need the strength to move on from past wounds. Looking up at Jacob, she reached for the ring. My answer is yes, she declared. I'll call my family tomorrow and tell them that if there's any chance to be a true family, I'm ready to work on it. Jacob embraced her amid the softly glowing Christmas lights. On that winter night, Amy found her path. A way to embrace new love while carrying the lessons of the past, with the courage to forgive those who hurt her. True strength, she realized, was about standing up, moving forward, and sometimes extending a hand. The guests will be arriving soon, announced the waiter politely. Amy looked around the private dining room of Embrace, the new flagship restaurant from Monroe Restaurant Group. 5 years had passed, and her life had taken directions she never imagined. Her best-selling cookbook was in its 3rd edition, and the food festival she organized now toured the United States. Her marriage to Jacob was entering its 3rd year, and together they navigated life and business side by side. Is the cake ready? Amy called out to the kitchen. Perfect, the chef responded confidently. Tonight was truly special. It felt like the conclusion of a story that began one Christmas 5 years ago. Taking a deep breath, Amy gazed out the window at Chicago's shimmering night view. The door opened and the first guest stepped in. Brooke approached with a smile, and right behind her, a young man held a small cake box. It's for David, Brooke's fiancé. I baked this myself, Brooke announced as she opened the cake box. I'm still learning, she added with a shy smile, and Amy couldn't help but be surprised that her sister was now the one behind the cake. While their father's company was in the midst of rebuilding, Brooke had also reinvented her own life. After many trials and errors, she'd opened a small bakery that had blossomed into a locally adored shop. It's lovely, Amy said sincerely. The decorations have improved so much too. Soon their parents arrived. Richard and Martha looked a bit older than before, but their faces radiated humility and gentleness. Sorry we're late, Martha apologized. The volunteer work at the food bank took longer than I expected. After nearly facing bankruptcy, Martha had started volunteering at a food bank as a way to give back to the community. What began as an attempt to save face soon turned into genuine joy from helping others. Quietly, Richard, embraced by his daughter, murmured, "Thanks to you, we've learned so much." His company had survived, even if it was now smaller, and had rebuilt itself around honesty and transparency. At that moment, Jacob entered the room. After greeting everyone, he walked over to Amy and gently took her hand. Now let's enjoy the special meal prepared for tonight, he announced. On the table lay a unique course that he and Amy had designed together. A menu that told the story of her journey from the early days of her food blog to where she was now. As the dinner progressed, conversation flowed naturally. Gone were the tense moments and forced smiles. Each family member openly shared their successes, failures, hopes, and dreams. When dessert arrived, Amy stood up and raised her glass. 5 years ago at Christmas, I reached a turning point in my life at another restaurant in the city, she began softly. That night, I learned that true value isn't measured by money or possessions. It's about respecting and supporting one another. And, above all, living honestly with ourselves. Each of us has walked our own path and faced challenges, but I truly believe those experiences have made us better people. Tears shimmered in Martha's eyes as Brooke nodded silently, and Richard listened with deep reflection. We're gathered tonight not just to remember the past, but to celebrate the start of a new bond. A relationship where we acknowledge our differences while still standing together as family, Amy continued. Then Amy glanced at Jacob, who also rose to his feet. Holding hands, they smiled at everyone as Jacob made a special announcement. Next spring, we'll be welcoming a new member into our family. The room erupted with cheers and tears. Although old wounds might never fully heal, the promise of new life offered a chance for true reconciliation. As snow gently accumulated on the window panes, Amy reflected, life is unpredictable. It can bring both pain and unexpected gifts. What truly matters is not losing yourself along the way, and always having the courage to love. That's the secret to the happiness I've found. 5 years later, during another snowy Christmas in Chicago, Amy was busy finishing the final proofread of a manuscript at the Taste of Chicago editorial office. She closed her laptop and gazed out at the city lights beginning to sparkle in the dusk. Her life had transformed dramatically since accepting Jacob's offer. What began as a modest weekly column had exploded into a flagship feature. Amy's Taste Discovery consistently topped the online charts, and she'd even signed her first cookbook contract. Is the cake ready? Amy called out to the kitchen. It's David, Brooke's fiancé's cake, and I baked it myself, Brooke chimed in proudly, revealing not only her new skills but also a glimpse into how she had reinvented herself. Once a time when her life centered around her father's rebuilding company, Brooke had now established her own beloved bakery. Her parents then joined them. Richard and Martha, though looking older and softer, now carried an air of genuine humility. Sorry we're late, Martha explained once more. The volunteer work at the food bank had kept her longer than planned. Since recovering from near bankruptcy, Martha found purpose in helping others, and Richard's business had shifted to a model built on honesty and transparency, a change inspired by family bonds. Finally, Jacob reappeared, greeting everyone warmly before standing next to Amy and taking her hand. Now let's enjoy the special meal prepared for tonight, he said. The dinner course, co-designed by Amy and Jacob, captured her entire journey, from her humble food blog beginnings to the thriving career she enjoyed today. As the courses passed, old tensions and forced smiles melted away, replaced by heartfelt exchanges of personal successes, failures, hopes, and dreams. When dessert came around, Amy stood, raised her glass and softly declared, 5 years ago at Christmas, I reached a turning point in my life at a restaurant in the city. That night taught me that true value isn't in material things or money, but in respecting and supporting each other, and in living honestly with oneself. Though we've each traveled different paths and faced our own hardships, those experiences have helped shape us into better people. Her words brought tears to Martha's eyes, a quiet nod from Brooke, and thoughtful silence from Richard. Tonight, we're not just remembering the past, we're celebrating the beginning of a new relationship, one where we honor our differences while supporting one another as family, Amy continued. Then with a shared smile, Jacob stood beside her. Holding hands, they looked at everyone as Jacob announced, we have a special announcement. Next spring, we'll be welcoming a new member into our family. Cheers and tears filled the room. Even though old fractures might never completely mend, the hope that a new life could bring fresh beginnings offered true reconciliation. As snow continued to dust the window panes, Amy mused to herself, life is unpredictable. It sometimes brings hardship and sometimes unexpected blessings. What really matters is staying true to yourself and always having the courage to love. That's the secret to the happiness I've found. In that moment, as the family gathered around a beautifully set table in embrace, the new flagship restaurant of Monroe Restaurant Group, each person reflected on how far they'd come. Brooke's Bakery, once a modest venture, had become a local favorite. Her parents, once burdened by past mistakes, now wore humility like a badge of honor. And Amy, whose quiet passion for food had transformed her life, now led a successful career and a new chapter filled with promise. Is the cake ready? Amy called out one more time, a smile tugging at her lips. Behind her, Brooke, David Brooke's fiancé's baker, presented a freshly baked cake, a symbol of her own transformation and growth. With the room filled with genuine conversation, heartfelt apologies, and sincere dreams for the future, the family celebrated not only the festive season but the new beginnings they had forged together. At dessert, Amy stood once more and raised her glass. Tonight I want to share one more thought, she said softly. On that fateful Christmas 5 years ago, I learned that the true measure of our lives isn't in money or possessions, but in the respect we show one another and the honesty with which we live our lives. Every path we take, no matter how difficult, shapes us into who we are meant to be. Her eyes swept over the room, meeting each family member's gaze. Let's honor the past by embracing a future where our differences make us stronger, and where love and understanding guide us as a family. Jacob then stepped forward, smiling warmly. I have one more announcement, he said. Next spring we'll welcome a new member to our family. His words sparked a joyful uproar, and amid cheers and tears, the hope of new beginnings bridged old divides. As snowflakes continued to drift outside, Amy reflected quietly, life is unpredictable. It may bring pain, but it also offers unexpected gifts. What matters most is never losing yourself on the journey, and always having the courage to love. In that moment, she knew that the secret to true happiness was embracing change, forgiving past hurts, and always moving forward with hope in her heart.